Can you imagine running a multi-million dollar company with no CEO, no strategy, no operating system? It just would never work, right? But most of us are doing that with our most important team, our family. I'm Dave Inglis, and I'm so excited to kick off this podcast series by talking to you today about the ultimate promotion, becoming a chief family officer. So as we kick off this journey together, I think it's really important that I spend a bit of time with you going back a couple decades just to quickly expose you to where some of those important seeds were planted in my journey when it comes to leading at home. I grew up in Ontario, Canada, and maybe like you, I grew up in a family-run business. And so what that meant was that a lot of the time that I spent with my dad in particular, who was the owner-operator of a second-generation motorcycle dealership, was at the shop. And I loved this. This was a huge part of my upbringing. I loved riding bikes. And as my parents went through a separation, I started to spend less and less time with my dad and less time at the shop. And as I got into my teen years, like most kids with their parents, me and my dad started to experience some tension and some conflict, a pretty normal story when it comes to sons and their fathers, right? But I got to a particular point where I had more or less wrote off my dad, said I didn't want to hang out with him or speak to him any longer. And I kind of went my own way for a number of years with a real chip on my shoulder, a chip on my shoulder that inspired me and really motivated me to try and build a bigger and a better business. And at the same time, showing that I could be a really great parent and a really great partner and do well in both of those worlds. So I went to university. I studied kinesiology. I wanted to play high level sports, but I had a pretty bad back and neck injury when I was around 16 or 17 years old. And that pathway was not really possible for me. So I got into research and I started to build a new company called the Concussion Toolbox with a couple of the faculty that were supervising my research. Long story short, I started to get into that after school and was owning and operating that company. And I thought I was well on my way to building some really good progress towards this vision that I had for myself. And like many entrepreneurs, you're constantly navigating between running the business and really being a technician of it and getting the work done, but also having some really key moments to be able to pause, look at the company, take a few steps back. And like you've heard before, instead of working in the business, working on the business, looking at strategy, looking at customers, trying to build systems so that ultimately this company could be successful without me, right? And I could play a key role in it, but I knew that was going to be an important part of me accomplishing both of those abilities to lead at home and at work, was building a company that I did not require me to be a part of it day in and day out. Where it all kind of turned south for me, though, was when I came home one day. I lived just across the street from the building where my company was operating out of. And I came home one day to a partner that I was with for a number of years, opened the door and saw a stack of bags that were packed at the front door. And I learned pretty quickly that we weren't going on vacation. We weren't going away for 2 or 3 nights or any surprises like that. The real surprise there was that my partner had decided to leave me. And it was in that moment that I had realized that while I was so focused on building this company to go improve my dad, that I could do both of those really well, I actually ended up becoming the very person I said I didn't want to be. So much like bankruptcy happens quite gradually and then quite suddenly, that's exactly what happened to me at home. And I'm so glad that it did, to be honest with you, looking back, for 2 reasons. One, my partner at the time, my gosh, she deserved somebody way more committed and present than I was. She was absolutely incredible. And at that particular point in my life, I was not able to deliver what she deserved. And secondly, this is the exact wake-up call that I needed looking back. I mean, I was so overt about how committed I was to doing both those things, growing a great company and building a great life at the same time. But my audio was not matching my video. This was the exact accountability that I needed. So I took myself away for a couple weeks after that. I remember going to British Columbia and then Hawaii all on my own as my first trip to do a bit of soul searching and really trying to ask myself, like, how the hell did I find myself here so unexpectedly? And looking back, the writing was on the wall. There was date nights and movie nights and time that we were spending together on weekends, where I was constantly on the phone with clients or doing one more email or working on one more quick proposal, all disguised under this idea of me building our future together. But I actually wasn't there in the present moment with her. I was totally missing the mark. And as I was away, it started to dawn on me that I was not just having this success at the cost of my relationships. I was so embarrassed at the current state of my health and how overweight I was, I wouldn't even go in the ocean when I was in Hawaii. So it wasn't just my relationship, but it was my health set. And I would say even at a deeper level, this was the first time I was actually away from my work for any extended period of time. And it dawned on me that I had no fucking idea even what I wanted to do with my free time. I had totally lost a sense of identity of the things that I uniquely liked to do outside of my profession and my vocation, right? So this was a really important part of my journey, a huge wake-up call that led me to do two really important things. One was pick up the phone and call my dad and apologize. After not talking for many years, it dawned on me that I did not try to do this intentionally. And now having gone through this firsthand experience, it really opened my eyes to the reality that I bet you my dad was not trying to do it intentionally as well. And there was a lot more context that I was missing. I was spending so much time trying to explain what I felt were missing without a real sense of curiosity or empathy to what was going on the other side for him, what his experience was, and what was really making it so difficult, the pressures that he was carrying. And the second key piece that really came from this experience for me was to start being more intentional about talking about this with the people that were on my team, the people that were in my community. And what that ultimately led to me doing was stepping away from this business and starting to ask myself, how can I go about this process beginning again, where my sole motivation is not growing my net worth, but is really using the business building process as a way for building me as a person. And as I started to have these types of conversations with different leaders and different people who were building and growing companies, it started to dawn on me that there was two different pathways in front of me. One was going to be where my family could be the very thing that is going to sabotage my best energy. Families are very dynamic. There's a lot of complexity to it. And I remember speaking with a client of mine who was going into a really important meeting with her board to close some significant fundraising, getting text messages from her husband saying, oh my gosh, you forgot to make sandwiches today. It's like the little things that can zap out your energy right before really key moments. And it's hard to just imagine how something so trivial and so small can get in the way of something so big and so important. So the one pathway would be, if I really go about this by default, my family could be the thing that I use as an excuse for holding me back, or the thing that's making everything else harder. Or if I wanted to go about really building my family by design, I could put myself in a position where my family is actually my covert advantage. It is the foundation and the belonging that I have that gives me the courage and the capacity to step out in the world and take on really amazing challenges, knowing that I have a wonderful, strong, secure place to go back to, and a team that is behind the scenes helping me continue to cultivate the ability to go and do what I do. It's not the reason why I can't do things. It can be the very reason why I'm going to go and doing things and getting out of bed in the morning. So both after this firsthand experience that I had, and also now working with hundreds of leaders at the intersection of their family and their business, it's really become quite clear to me that there are really 5 core challenges that leaders have that get in the way of them really being able to integrate family in their business and put themselves in a position where their family can be their covert advantage. So the first challenge here is having no shared vision. In a company, having a shared vision is so important, right? When you have dozens or hundreds or thousands of people working together, you need to know what winning means, where we're playing, how we go about winning in a unique way. We need to know what our core values are. We need to know what's important over the next 5 years. And we also need to know what's important over the next 5 days. This clarity allows us to really build some great alignment. But inside of families, it's very uncommon, I would say, that the family has a shared vision of what it means for them to be able to win together. A lot of business owners and leaders that I speak to are very clear around what it means for them to win personally. But when I ask them, what does it mean for your family to win together? It's typically met with a blank stare and a realization this is a conversation they have not had, and one that they don't have a lot of certainty around. The second key challenge that I find in a lot of homes is that there's really not a lot of accountability, right? As I shared with you in my story, this happened quite gradually and quite suddenly. There was no real recurring system or points of accountability to be able to have conversations. And if ever we had conversations about how I wasn't present or if things weren't going well, it was never in a space where it was predictable and expected. So it was often met with a lot of confrontation and conflict. I often say, never work on the plumbing when it's raining. And so a lack of accountability is another really core issue inside of a lot of homes. There's no predetermined space to be able to talk about how things are going in our system and our family dynamic. And in the company, we have these systems all the time. Accountability, I mean, this is how we make sure We're going to deliver on our promises. We have annual planning. We have quarterly results that we have to go and deliver. We have, in many cases, weekly, if not daily accountability with a lot of our team leaders to follow through on the key activities that we have. We have personal development check-ins and coaching calls with our managers and our leaders. These are all examples of ways that accountability is structured and not left to chance inside of organizations. Not the case in a lot of families. The third most common core issue that I see at home is the challenge around time scarcity. Inside of companies, as we continue to get bigger and take on more, we can leverage the resources that we have from our profit or from investments to be able to buy back our time and hire more people so that we can expand the amount of time our organization has to get done and follow through on its commitments. But when it comes to our home life, we all know that we each have 1,440 minutes every day. We don't get any less, we don't get any more. It really comes down to how effective we are at using that resource of time effectively. This is a really core challenge because unlike a company that is so natural and common for us to talk about our hiring plan, where we have pain points, how we're going to solve for those either by re-engineering our systems or growing our team to be able to go and meet that opportunity, time scarcity is a real core issue on the home front. And one that we spend a lot of time earning money. We spend a lot of time trading our money to grow our money through investments. But a core opportunity here is learning how do we actually spend some of our money to buy back our time at home to expand our capacity, a core challenge we're going to talk a lot about. The fourth big challenge that I see in a lot of homes is poor conflict repair. Going back to my point around accountability earlier, inside of a company, it's amazing how we can really quite quickly turn on some really sophisticated skills around emotional regulation and conflict repair when there's some money on the line. When we have a key team member who's potentially going to be leaving if we don't address a particular problem, we have a great way of being able to sit down and hash things out. But when it comes to our relationships at home, they're a little bit different. There's not the same level of accountability in the room. And truthfully, I think a lot of us just perceive that since we have our family, they can't leave us, unlike our team members or our customers. So they just have to kind of put up with what they have. There's no real consequence to that. And so this conflict repair skill is so important. It's one that we know is important, but most of us actually just try and avoid conflict instead of learning how to use conflict to deepen our relationship. And the way that we do that is by learning how to be very good at conflict repair, because strong, badass relationships are only ever always built through conflict. But this is a core challenge in a lot of homes. There's not a lot of good examples or space and time invested into learning that skill. And lastly, I would say the fifth core issue, one that I very genuinely and no judgment, just observing and reporting back what I'm seeing, is that a lot of us are waiting for our partners to change. This is a big core issue when it comes to evolving how our family gets along and gets things done. It's very easy to play the victim card and to feel like we're doing so much that our partner doesn't see and doesn't recognize, and pointing the finger or the blame game on our partners and how it's their fault and their lack of contributions or how they just don't get it. That's the core reason why we are what we are and why we struggle with what we struggle with. So a big part of continuing to be able to evolve how our family operates is taking absolute personal responsibility. And we're going to be talking about this, using our family as a way of really deepening our own sense of self-awareness and becoming more astute in our understanding of how we actually create very conditions that we complain about a lot of times. But it's that victim mentality and pointing to our partner and saying it's their fault or they're the reason why our experience is the way that it is a core issue that holds a lot of our families back from thriving. So when I look back on that moment when my partner had left me, all 5 of these core issues were a contributing factor to that particular dynamic in the moment in time that had led to her making that really important and that right decision. And likely for you, you're experiencing 1, 2, if not all of these right now when it comes to managing the intersection of your family and your work. But I want to make a really important point when we start to talk about work and it potentially being perceived as an issue or the problem that's getting in the way of you having more harmony and connection at home. When it comes to alcoholism or alcoholic addictions, a lot of times we think that the alcohol is the problem. And I don't believe that to be true. I think alcohol is actually the solution for a lot of addicts. At a much deeper level, there's a core issue inside of that individual where they go to alcohol to solve their discomfort. They go to alcohol to dissociate and to avoid them or help them cope with the pain that they're experiencing at a much deeper level. When it comes to looking at your relationship with work, I just want to caution you to be really careful about assigning the problem to your work. What I would respectfully like to suggest is even look backing on myself, right? My work and my commitment to building my company and building a really successful enterprise was the solution to a much deeper core challenge that I had, was that my sense of self-worth was deeply connected to my net worth. And so please be really mindful about that. It's not your work being your problem. My invitation and the thing I'd really like to consider is that there's a core issue that is much deeper, that your relationship to work is actually the solution to. So now at the core of becoming a chief family officer in your own home is the acknowledgement and the commitment to starting to work on your family, not just operating and being in it all the time. Just like a really great entrepreneur has to go through that important decision point, not just to be a technician and somebody who is operating the business, but starting to have an owner mentality and creating the space to work on it so that you can build the systems and the capacity for it to thrive without you. Now, when it comes to doing this in your own home, there's three really important landscapes that I'm going to help you navigate and better understand and do some really important work in here so that you can work on your family. The first is family strategy. This is carving out some time and energy to get really clear around your context and the bigger decisions that you're making. What does it mean for a family to be able to win together? What does it mean for our family to win individually? And how are we going to actually build a strategy that allows all of that to take place? Where are we going to be living? Where are we going to be working? All these big questions that help you build your strategic approach as a family. The next key area is going to be your systems of living. So strategy is one piece, but systems is how we actually operate day to day. It's when you're starting to build some really great rituals and practices inside of your family so you don't leave what's important to chance. And you can actually start to create some more time for yourself so you have more capacity to connect and deepen your relationships. And then the third piece is going to be relationship mastery. It's going to be spending some time to better understand the unique parts of each of your family members. How do you disconnect when you experience conflict? How can you actually create better environments to use conflict as a way to deepen your relationship together? Much like an athlete, not trying to rehab relationships all the time, but prehab your relationships and proactively invest in them because you know they're going to go through stress and challenge as you're continuing to build a really great family and a great career at the same time. So go ahead, let me know in the comments here, of these three areas, family strategy, systems of living, or relationship mastery, do you believe is the most important place for you to start when it comes to working on your family? I promise you throughout this whole podcast series, we're going to be navigating and exploring all three of these areas in great detail. But please don't forget, every great company has somebody working on the business. And every great family deserves somebody to work on the family as well. The question is it going to be you?